All right, so for under questionnaire design tips, designing an effective questionnaire is very crucial for obtaining accurate and also meaningful responses from your respondents. So these are some key tips for questionnaire design. So the question order is very key, and in this tip, you have to be mindful of the impact of question order. So in this case, the sequence of the question can influence the participants' responses. So you always find a way to start with a simple and non-threatening questioning to build a rapport between you and the respondent before moving on to a more complex and also sensitive topics. This is very key. And again, still under the order of question, you always find a way to consider grouping related questions together to maintain coherence. I've given an example to that. Now, for tailored version for different population, you find a way to create versions for different people or specific target population. I say this because in this case, you can create different version of the questionnaire, which is will be tailored to different sets of people or different set of target group or target population. And by doing that, you make sure you ensure that the language example and also the language that you use, the examples that you use, and the cultural references are relevant and engaging for each of these groups. So that is about the tailored version for different population. Now, when you consider the third one as a tip for questionnaire design, which is the clear instruction, you always have to find a way to provide clear and concise instruction on how to complete the questionnaire. Most times, you also include information about the purpose of the the study that you are conducting and also the specific terms and concepts and any sort of expectation that you would obtain from the respondents. So the expectation could be for the response format that you'll be getting from the respondents. So for clear instructions, we make sure the questions are clear and also concise. And by doing so, it becomes more easier for them to answer the questions and also complete it. You also find a way to use plain language to enhance the understanding. Don't use those jargons to confuse your respondents. Now, in terms of the length consideration, um, always make sure you assess the length of the questions and also consider if it might be too long for the participant. So you put yourself in the shoes of the respondent. Of course, nobody will want to read a lengthy paragraph just to answer a simple question. Just to answer maybe a simple or just one question. So long questions may lead to fatigue and also reduce responses, the respondent's quality of response. If he is tired reading the entire question, either they get confused, they don't understand the context well, and by so doing, they might be tired, reading the question over and over again just to grasp the understanding of that question. And if they don't understand it based on the length, there's a high probability that the response that they're going to give will not be of good quality. So make sure you also prioritize your questions based on the research objectives to help streamline the questionnaire. This is very key when you think of the length of the questions. So you have to consider that. That is a very good key. Now, the layout and the space too as well. You pay attention to the layouts to ensure a visually appealing and also easy to follow structure. You use concise formatting, font size, spacing to ensure readability, You consider the pacing of the questions to maintain participants' interest in the questions that you are asking. And you also find a way to break down long sessions with subheadings and use logical flow to guide the respondents through the survey or the interview or the questionnaire that is being put across to them. We can have a pre-testing. We can also have um, for the pre-testing, most of the time we conduct pre-testing with small samples, and that is where sometimes we call it a pilot stage, just to see some mini responses to help us put up the questions correctly to the respondents that we're going to give. So we can test the questions on some few people based on some of their way of understanding. Then we will now use that to roll out the actual question to the entire population that is going to answer the questions. Now, different questions and response formats are employed in survey and questionnaires to gather information in a structured way. So in this case, we have a breakdown of the close-ended and open-ended responses formats that we spoke about earlier. And under close-ended, these are the available ones, as you can see. The radio button, the check boxes, the rating scale, the Likert scale, the semantic differential scale. I've spoken about this. I'm just recapping on this. The lecture period ended at a time, but I just decided to continue to finish up this lecture. For ended responses, under this, we can think of the unrestricted test responses. So in this case, participants provide unrestricted and also personal answers without predefined options. So that is for the ended responses, the open-ended responses. So most of the time, this is ideal for gathering detailed qualitative information. This also, I gave a little explanation to that in the previous slides. These are how the Likert scale and also the semantic differential scale looks like. So I've spoken about this one too as well. Now, we need to find a way to encourage a good response in a study. And this is very key, mainly because um, if we don't encourage good response in a study, we might not be obtaining we might not be obtaining reliable and meaningful data from our respondents actually, sorry. So these are some basic strategies that we can use to enhance the respondents or participants engage and also give us thoughtful responses on the questions that we do ask them. So if you want to have an engaging and also good response from your respondents, make sure you are able to go through these seven steps or key points that we're going to outline in here. The first four, which are is shown on your screen, the first is the clarity of the purpose that we of the question. So we have to find a way to clarify the purpose. So in doing so, we clearly communicate the objectives and also the importance of the study to the respondent. And again, we help them understand how the responses contribute to the valuable insights and the research outcome. This is very key. And it's when we do that, there's a high probability we'll be getting very good response. We also have to find a way to ensure anonymity. By doing so, we assure the participant that their responses will be kept confidential and anonymous. That is why most questionnaires does not include people's name. By doing this, it will help foster a sense of security and also encourage the respondents to provide honest and open feedbacks. When we ensure anonymity, there's a high probability they will give us more responses to the right responses to the information that's or the questions that we do ask them. Confidentiality here is key. So make sure you encourage you encourage them and let them know that indeed their responses are not going to be, you know, they are going to keep their identity safe, and you're just using their responses to conduct, your research. So careful questionnaire design can also encourage a good response. If you do your question, you just come out with a questionnaire design anyhow, there's a likelihood you will not get a very good response. When you carefully sit down to go through to design your questionnaire very well, your chances of getting an encouraging good response from the respondent is very high. So make sure you develop the questionnaire thoughtfully. You ensure questions are clear, concise, and logically organized. A well designed questionnaire will enhance comprehension and also reduce the high likelihood of confusion. This will prevent the respondent, from getting confused or the type of what the question is really, what the question they are reading or they are being asked, um, what it means. It makes it easier for them to understand. So make sure you have a careful, well thought through questionnaire prepared to give to your respondents. Now, we can have a short version option. So in this case, you can offer a condensed version of the questionnaire for participants with limited time. So there are, there are times people are very busy. So in that case, you give them access to your questions that are, you give them access to questions that can somewhat, provide good answers, but not in a lengthy form. You can have different versions of your questionnaire, a short version and also a big version. Providing flexibility would also increase the likelihood of the participants, especially for those with busy schedules. There are times you get a questionnaire from someone and you need to sit down to read to understand. If they are short or coincide versions, everybody, people that are busy would go in for that and still answer your questions for you. So make sure you have a short version, if you can, of the questionnaire that you want to administer to these respondents. Prompt messages, incentives, and also response rates expectation can yield good responses in the questions that you provide to your respondents. Under prompt messaging or messages, you can send friendly, and also non-intrusive follow-up reminders or prompts to these respondents or participants who have not completed their question or the questionnaire that you have administered to them. There are times people are so busy they will not even have time to. They even forget that there is a time limit to complete a particular questionnaire. So in doing this, you can send prompts, um, some sort of prompting messages to them, and you do that by sending these friendly and non-intrusive, follow-up reminders. Gentle reminders can serve as a nudge and also may result in increased response rates. There are times people will forget, in responding to your questionnaire. Um, Sometimes, students request for recommendation from lecturers, the institutions that they want to probably go and further their education um, do send questionnaires about for us to feel more like to recommend the student. Sometimes we are too busy, we sometimes forget, so when the student does, include a lecturer's details for the filling of maybe a recommendation, it is also it will be a good way to also keep, reminding or sending that recommendation request to the lecturer and reminding him so that he completes it for you. As I said, sometimes people do forget. So sending these friendly, non-intrusive follow-up reminders is a very good way of getting good responses to some of the questionnaires that we put up there for our respondents to fill. Incentives. Sometimes you might consider providing incentives to motivate the participants, and this can include vouchers, small rewards, or entry into a prize draw, and so on and so forth. You know, people just don't want to do things for free. So, in doing so, you can give out some vouchers or small rewards to people who would fill some questionnaire. And I'm told there are some websites that, when you fill a questionnaire, they give you some money. Some of you can check it out. Those websites do exist, so you can check some of these out. So incentives usually find a way. It's a way to express appreciation for their time and also the efforts. And when they know there is some sort of incentives for them, they will fill your questionnaire, and this will thereby increase the response rates for your questionnaires. Response rates expectations. So in this case, while a response rate of about 40% is generally considered acceptable in research, you have to also be aware that the lower response rates are common in practice. There are times you might not even get people, filling out your questionnaires. So you should always find a way to put out more questionnaire to a lot of people, so that it is by research it is believed that about 40% would the response rate that you're going to get will be about 40%, you know. And there are times you might even have less than 40%. If you have 40%, it's quite okay. It will be a good, if you do have more than 40%, that is even better. So you craft your question in such a way that when you administer those questions, don't be expecting so much. If you want a huge percentage, then means you should send it. The target group should be increased in a way so that you can get lots of responses from these respondents. You adjust the expectation based on the nature of the study and on the target group as well, and you consider potential biases in the collected data. There's a high probability that people might not really read the questions, especially when it's open-ended questions. When it's a close-ended question, you just make a selection and probably not go through the questions. So that could be at a disadvantage to these close-ended questions too. So always find a way to remember that participants' engagement is influenced by various factors. And a combination of these strategies can contribute to a higher response rate and more meaningful data collection. So, providing a positive, supportive experience for participants is a key to the success of any research study. Now, addressing questionnaires is one of the crucial phases in research, and careful planning and testing are always essential to getting more reliable data during the collection phase. So, these are some of the steps for administering a questionnaire: timeline planning, design offline, and also the program complete online template. Let's go through each one of them. For the timeline planning, usually we establish a clear timeline, and we do this by defining the start and the end date for the questionnaire administration. And we also make sure that we set intermediate milestone for tasks like questionnaire design, testing, and also participants recruitment. So that is about the timeline planning. When we talk of the offline design offline, we normally begin the questionnaire design offline by starting the questionnaire design process offline, outlining the structure and the content and also the response format. So when this is done, we can consider the logical flow of the questions and also the overall clarity of the survey that we want to conduct. And finally, for the program and also complete online templates under this session, there are other questionnaire administering types that exist, which I'll talk to you about in the next slide. For the third one, the transfer for the program complete online templates, we can have a transfer to online platform. So in doing so, we transfer the design questionnaire to an online survey tool like SurveyMonkey or any platform that can help us, administer our questionnaire. When we do this, this will be a good way to ensure that all the questions, responses that we get from our respondents will have response options, we have skip logics, and any required functionality that we can incorporate into our question. Most of these online tools have these facilities to help us create some of these skip logics. There are questions, a question like, um, are you a boy? If yes, then it means you will not go through the no aspects. You move on to the yes portion. That is the skip logic kind of questions. So those are examples of program or complete online templates. And as I said, there are tools that can do that for us. SurveyMonkey is one of them. So still on administering questionnaire, we can also have a portion for the test survey. In this case, we conduct thorough testing. So when we deal with the survey, we test the entire survey to ensure that its functions are also intended. We make sure we verify the question branching, the skip patterns, and the response validation in our questionnaires are working properly. We have to make sure all these things are thoroughly working before we put it out there. So we have to test the survey ourselves to make sure all these approaches that we'll be using to get information from the respondents are working. And again, we also have this approach, this administering questionnaire, which is the test with group. So in doing this, we validate the clarity and also the effectiveness of the questionnaire. And this can be done sometimes by piloting the survey with a group of individuals who are not part of the actual survey population. We can also seek the feedback on the clarity and also the efficiency. Then we will do that. So we can test with the group, we can test with a survey. All those are examples of administering questionnaires. Then we have the next one, which is the participant recruitment. Here we develop a recruitment strategy. We do this by establishing a strategy for participant recruiting. We do this by establishing a strategy for the participants recruitment. And in doing so, we conduct methods such as random sampling. We target we have some targeted invitations made, and also we can have other appropriate approaches when it comes to the development or recruitment strategy. And also in this case too, we also find a way to ensure that the chosen sample is more or less a representation of the entire population. So if we want to, it is believed that statistically, if we should sample some group of people, some parts of a target group, the responses that we will get from the target group is most likely going to be the responses of the entire population. That is when if we have a very good sample size, the responses for that particular sample size is most likely going to be the sample size of the entire population that we will pick up from, that will be available. All right, so going to the next one, the next slides, where we have observation in the wild or direct observation in the natural environment. It's one of the valuable research methods for gaining insights into users' behavior, context, and also culture. These are some key aspects that relates to this approach. So in doing this, most of the time when we are conducting observation in natural environments, there are some few things that the researchers um, observe. And the first thing that some of these researchers observe among the users, they observe the users in their everyday real world environments rather than in a controlled or artificial setting. By going through this approach, we'll be able to allow for a more authentic understanding of how users interact with the products and also services or the environment. We have the structuring framework and also the degree of participation in the ethnography. So these are things that I would want you to go through. Um, Make sure you go through these slides. And if you have any question, you can put them in the forum. These ones, quality and qualitative data analysis, these are self-explanatory. I would want you to go through it as well. There's as well, these are qualitative analysis, averages, percentage, caution in data. You can read these ones. And the continuation there has been outlined in here. Please make sure you go through it. Basic qualitative analysis, um, presenting findings, and so on, and the tools that we can use for analyzing the data that we've collected from the respondents in the form of a questionnaire. You can use some of these data to, analyze some of these software to analyze our data. Thank you very much.